So last night I was trying to talk about furries, sexuality, and bestiality, but I was rather drunk on rum, so I didn't do a very good job of it. I rambled quite a bit and didn't stay on the topic very well, so I figured now that I'm sober, I would try to make that video again and do a better job of it this time. I suppose I'll start with talking about my first personal experience with the furry fandom, and that experience would be actually very little. I've only been to one FurCon just for a couple hours, and mostly it's because I am very socially awkward when it comes to people, being around people I don't know and or I've never met, and also very, very expensive for the hotel rooms and flying out to wherever it may be or what have you, so I don't really have that kind of disposable income. If I did, I might go. Probably not. It would just be too awkward for me. So, that said, my personal experience, I'm not really that active in the furry fandom. So, for anything further I have to say, just keep that in mind. You could probably find better representatives of furries than me, but I'll say what I can here. Keep thinking this coffee's gonna fall over. I'm so professional. So I guess I think last night I was talking to someone about personas, which was people identifying themselves with certain animals, and personally, I like to identify myself with a coyote. That sounds so weird when you say it out loud, oh, I feel like this animal, but it's true. Every individual human being has certain traits that you could probably identify with some sort of animal's behavior. I went over that last night, but I think no matter who you asked in the world, if you got some sort of personality sheet on them, you could probably match it up with some animal or another. So, it's not really that crazy. Furries, of course, I think we take it a step further, and so it's a little more serious and spiritual, as opposed to being just, this kind of whimsical thing that I suppose it would be for most people. As far as the sexuality part of it goes, furries are infamous for YIF, which is a furry term for sexual intercourse or what have you. Personally, I like furry pornography, hentai of the furry style, anthropomorphics. I don't see any problem with that. I'm not hurting anyone. It's not hurting me. And on that note, when it comes to bestiality, I think a similar vein of thought should be pursued. If animals tend to be very, they tend to let you know if you're doing something they don't like. If it's a horse, it'll kick your skull, and if it's a dog, it'll bite you or whine or what have you. It's when it comes to animals, it's fairly obvious if you're doing something that they're not comfortable with. And I think that when it comes to having sex with animals, bestiality, that the best course of action is to treat it much as two humans having sex. Both parties need to be aware of what's going on. They need to be old enough to be sexually active and not get hurt. And both parties need to be comfortable with it. If those conditions are met, if nobody's getting hurt, nothing's being forced, and everyone's enjoying it, or at the very least tolerating it. Obviously, it would be preferable if both sides were enjoying it. I think as long as all of those conditions are met, I really don't see how it could be a problem. People like to place morals and codes of ethics upon it and say, oh, that's disgusting, but regardless of whether or not you find it disgusting personally, as long as nobody's getting hurt and everyone's enjoying themselves, I don't see why it should be excuse me, why it should be illegal or considered immoral. I don't see any problem with it. Furries are obviously notorious for, the bestiality portion of it, but that's actually quite a misconception, I think. Perhaps there are more people who are into bestiality that are also furries, like perhaps the occurrence of people who like bestialities is higher in the furry fandom. That may or may not be the case. It probably is. But in my experience, it's how should I put this? In my experience, people within the furry fandom aren't any more or less sexual than anyone else, I suppose would be the way to put it. Yeah, there are people like me who like furry pornography, and personally I don't like the fursuiting gif. I think fursuits just look weird, and unless it's a really cool one or really realistic. But for the most part, I think they just kind of look cartoony. I don't like it. So personally, when it comes to the fursuit sex stuff, I probably wouldn't do it. But there are people who do. Obviously, within the fandom, I think it's a relatively small percentage of furries who are into that. Who are into GIF. I mean, if you go into a furry fandom, they're mostly just normal people who feel some sort of spiritual kinship with an animal. I think for most people that really is all it is. It's just you feel an emotional or spiritual connection to some animal or another that is deeper than your average person. And I'm not going to get into the root causes or the psychology of all of that. This isn't the video for that. But yeah, I don't know. When it comes to people being attracted to animals, as far as that portion of it, well, humans are very strange when it comes to sex. I don't know if I could explain why that happens. I guess you would have to examine the qualities that someone finds sexually attractive, and I guess if an animal happens to match up with that, then I guess they would be attracted to the animal. I don't think that's too absurd or insane. Really, as long as nobody's getting hurt and you're not hurting any animals, I don't see why it's considered that strange. And really, if you look back in history and other cultures, it's not really that strange. Historically speaking, especially in mythology, anthropomorphism and bestiality is actually fairly common. I'm not going to be able to cite any perfect examples, except perhaps Anubis. Obviously, the Egyptians had a lot of anthropomorphic gods. The Mayans or the Aztecs, or somewhere, one of the South American, early Mesoamerican cultures had that like jaguar god of death. I'm not sure what the name is, Quetzalcoatl, and they had a lot of animal gods. It's fairly common. It makes sense. We've grown up as a species alongside of animals. We've evolved from animals. We are animals ourselves. So, if someone thinks, oh, that cheetah, I'd totally do that cheetah. I guess, what I would assume, they find something in that cheetah that they find sexually attractive. Maybe they like lankiness or, litheness. I think cheetahs are pretty lithe, I guess. But, perhaps there's deeper psychological reasons, though. It's a dangerous animal, so somehow the danger comes into it to make it sexually attractive. There's any myriad of reasons for it, and I don't know what they are, really. I can only speculate, so. But people are attracted to what they're attracted to. Some people are are sexually attracted to cars, some people are sexually attracted to buildings, or books, or their intelligence rather than looks, or they're more attracted to breasts than bucks, or more attracted to ass than tits. When it comes to human sexuality, there's a lot of very strange things, but just because something is strange doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong. So hopefully that was a little more concise, I guess. The furries aren't. I don't really think the furry any person in the furry fandom or any furry is necessarily more sexual than any other human being. They just have different tastes. That's really what it comes down to. We all have our perversions. Some of us hide it better than others, or some of us accept it more than others, but I think furries get a bad rap when it comes to the sexuality thing. I don't really understand why. I guess it's just an easy way for, if the news has been slow lately and there's a fur-con in town, then it's something convenient and shocking to report on. That's really all it comes down to. It's just bad publicity. I don't think furries are really any more or less perverse than any other group, and I don't see that they're doing any harm. I don't see that drawing animal porn, or as long as no one's raping any animals, I don't see that furries are necessarily harmful. So hopefully that was a little bit more concise. I tend to ramble. My thought process isn't very linear, unfortunately. Unfortunately for you, fortunately for me, it is not linear, because it makes life much more interesting and entertaining. But hopefully that was a little bit more concise, and it'll give anyone who's interested my viewpoints on the whole bestiality and furry sexuality. So, auf Wiedersehen.